All right. Well, welcome to Tent Makers Plus. Where tonight we are talking about our personal Airbnb business, and so we'll give a brief background. The next time we'll probably do it entirely virtually because I'm going to do most of it. I'm going to talk about how we've automated the process, and that is almost all software based. And so I'm going to take us through the different pieces of software and how we build it out and how I run it and how it operates and all that kind of stuff. So today we'll talk bigger top level business and the creation where we got to where we're at. And then we'll have questions and answers, and we'll talk about our miniature goals and maybe some big goals for the new year. And that'll be what we do tonight. So we got started, we bought our first property back in 2013, a year after we got married, for dirt cheap back then. It was a great time to buy, obviously. And then we did nothing for a long time. And then we bought another house that was in the end of 2019. We bought a big house, 3,300 square feet, mainly so that we could have the whole ministry there. We had gotten advice. Everyone said, yes, go ahead. We were like, hey, a 10-year house, we're going to be here for a decade. And they said, yep, sounds good. Got an input from the people that trained us, and everyone felt good about that. Got it for a good price as well, and interest rates were around 3.5%. So that was awesome. And then we went home to Seattle for Christmas break, and we got back, and we were asked to move to Corpus Christi in 2 months. So we actually only wound up living in that house for 6 months before we moved out of it, which was, tragic, but was really a godsend at the same time. We had no idea we'd spent all of our money on that house, and we were upside down on it. If we had sold it, we would have lost quite a bit of money. If we had rented it out, we were going to lose money every month. And some disciples came up and said, hey, we know you're moving to Corpus and you're having a tough time with the rent on this house. So how about 2 of us live here and we'll pay you whatever you need? And so they jumped into a year contract with us, which is so helpful. And then, we didn't know what we were going to do, but at that point in time, the market had turned. And then we're looking at summer of 2021 at this point, which is when houses, were historically high. And so we went, okay, well, let's sell. And we sold and made $75,000 off of it, and didn't even have to pay capital gains taxes because it was because of a move, a job move. So we wound up getting $75,000 in a year and a half, which, we went from how we're going to go broke because of this house. Why in the world did you do this, God? To, oh, that's what you were doing, God. Thank you very much. Now we understand. Moving on. And so from there, we bought a house over on what's called the Bluff here in Corpus Christi. And it's a 3-bedroom on one side and then a mother-in-law suite on the other side. And so we had looked at property for probably 2 to 3 months, put offers on a couple of different places. We're even ready to purchase this one place, but they wouldn't come down on the price enough for us after we found so much damage that needed to be done. And then we landed at this house, and my eyes got super bright because it had a full mother-in-law suite with its own bathroom, its own kitchen already built out, and it needed some work, which I love doing. I'm pretty decent at building things. And so we were able to put work into that. We were able to completely redo both of the kitchens, redo portions of the bathroom, change the lights, paint the whole inside, the outside, put a fence in between the houses so that they could have separate backyards, made a fire pit on one side. So we moved into that place and did work there. So while we're doing the ministry, we felt like the place we were currently at, I didn't want to have to drive over there and work on it. I wanted to spend, if I had free time, or maybe someone cancels an appointment or something like that, or it's our day off, I don't want to waste time driving all over the place and then bringing tools back and forth all the time. I just want to live there. So we moved in for a couple of solid months, totally redid that house, did a lot of it over Thanksgiving, took no Thanksgiving break, did that, and then did a lot of it over Christmas as well. And so we were able to rent out the 3-bedroom side to disciples who were moving to Corpus, and exactly what we were thinking about asking the 3-bedroom side for is what they wanted to pay. And so it worked out perfectly. It was a total God thing. And what was great about that is that covered the entirety of the mortgage on that house. So then we had this spare mother-in-law suite that we could play with and do anything with without worrying about paying for the mortgage. So what was great about that is we went, okay, well, we've heard this Airbnb thing is awesome. We've heard mixed reviews. Some people say don't do it. Some people say do it. So we have nothing to lose. So let's give it a shot since everything was already covered. Hey, Waldina. Yeah. They're knocking on the door here. Anyway, so we went ahead and at the time, Corpus Christi did not allow for short-term rentals. So you could do midterm, but you could not do short-term unless you had a commercial zone property, and this was residential. So we knew we couldn't actually do a traditional short-term Airbnb, but you could use the Airbnb platform still and provide month or more services. So as long as it's over 30 days, it's not considered short-term, and the city allowed it. So we opened it up for long-term, and we had one guy, the second day it was open, I think, booked for the first month, and he was coming in a few days. And then 3 days later, we had this baseball coach, and he booked for 5 months, right after the guy was done. So within a week, we had booked that property out for $1,850 a month for 6 months within the first week. And that was other than like utilities and a couple of minor fees at that point in time, it was all profit. And so we were like, oh my goodness, this works. This is crazy. Like, we just in a very short amount of time, we just made almost $11,000. Oh my gosh, in 6 months. We're looking at $22,000 a year. And that's just one side rented that way. For a mother-in-law suite that was 700 square feet. Now we made it look good and put a little bit of money into rehabbing the place, but it needed that anyway. And now we have equity in that property as well. So we saw that that went well and went, okay, this is a real thing. Let's go. And then the people that were living there, they wound up moving out a lot sooner than we had planned. And this is actually this year in 2023. So we were planning on doing it actually like right now, but they went, hey, we're having a kid, so we want to buy our own place earlier than we thought, so we're going to move out early. So we went, okay, sounds good. And so we went in, and again, we moved in and did ministry from there. And the nice thing is that the kids' school was right there, so super close. Finished renovating that side, getting it ready. So I think we got that side done in a month and a half. In between appointments and in between all the ministry stuff we were doing, and got that place up and running. While we were working on that place, our property in San Antonio that we hadn't sold when we bought back in 2013, we had disciple guys living there, and they said, hey, we're actually not gonna continue our lease, and we don't know anyone who wants to move in here. So we went back and forth. We got some input from disciples up there and wound up deciding, you know what, that property's not in too bad a condition, so let's do it. We'll go for it. And so as soon, literally like the day we got done with the first property, we dropped my mom off at the airport in San Antonio, checked out the condition of the place, and then drove up there every either Sunday or Monday morning on our day off, and then drove all the way back. It was a 2.5-hour drive each way. And then we used things like the 4th of July. We had an extra day there, so that was a 3-day. And then we wound up my dad came and helped us, and we wound up spending like a week and a half there at the tail end of it, where we just took some time off to get it finished. And that was this summer. So we opened up the 3-bedroom side of the one that has the mother-in-law suite here in Corpus Christi. So that was our second door, if you will. And then the third one was the 4-bedroom house that we had had forever back in San Antonio. So we opened up that one. And at that point in time, we felt like it was on the edge of what we could do to manage it the way we were currently doing it, especially with the cleaners, because Waldina was communicating with the cleaners at every single cleaning. Okay, I need you here. And it was getting hectic, and she was having trouble remember dates, and that became a major stress point for us. So we decided to do with the third door was, okay, it's time for us to now, we've got to automate this thing. And so that's when we started automating everything to where we were like, okay, we need to pay to automate to bring this business down, because we can't handle this anymore the way it's currently built. I skipped one step, backtracking. So we bought the first place and got it up and running of March of 2020. So we purchased in 2020, I'm sorry, We purchased in 2021. We got it up and running in March of 2022, which is when it was booked out for 6 months. And then our landlord decided it's time to increase the rate on you guys. They had also changed the term of the contracts where we were going to have to pay for repairs. We said, okay, it's time to start looking for houses. We were also really trying to push campus ministry at the time. And so we went, okay, well, God, what do you have? Waldina saw this place where we currently live, and I felt like, no way. It had mold issues horribly, and the pictures were bad. It has all these different issues, but they were old photos from before they had done all the remediation. It had termite damage. I mean, there were a lot of problems with it. And then it was way outside of our price range. Even right now, we are $1,400 a month shy on the rent from what we were paying at the other house and what we can actually afford. So this property, it cost us, $1,400 more than our current, what we're able to. So it's around, this property is about $3,200 a month in the mortgage. Okay, that's way beyond, our maximum is like $1,800 a month. And so but we knew that this Airbnb thing worked. And guess what this house has? This house has a guest house. So the first thing we did, we painted the whole inside of this house in one day. And then we went over there, and in a month we got, we put in a new AC unit, we redid the kitchen, we redid the bathroom while living here, and had moved in and all this different stuff. So got that whole place ready to go, furnished it and all that jazz. And then got back over, kind of back on this side of the property. And that is literally, as soon as we were done with that, is when the city said, we're now going to allow for short-term rentals to be a thing. And actually, our neighbor 2 doors down is the urban city planner, and he's the one who told us this is coming. It's going to be July 14th. That's when you guys can start actually doing this, and it's going to be awesome. So just a second. So we got that thing rented out, and it, at least even on slow months, pays for the 1,400, and a lot of times it'll do 1,800 and even up to like 2,600 a month, I think is what someone just booked it out for a whole month straight in February. And during the summertime, it easily does 150 a night and gets $3,000 to $3,500 a month booked out completely during the summertime months. So there's a big swing in the prices.
Just this one or all of them?
Just that by itself. So there's a big swing in prices. We wind up doing triple, 3 to 7 times the amount of revenue during the summertime as we do in November, December timeframe. So there is the slow season, and the fast-paced season is definitely a thing. One of the things a lot of people talk about in Airbnb is where are you going to do it at? So for instance, we've got a property up in San Antonio, and we run it remotely from here because all you need is a handyman and cleaners. If you've got that, you can run an Airbnb from anywhere in the world if you've got the right platform set up. So one of the things, you might not want to do it in the place where you live. It might be a bad spot to run an Airbnb in the place where you're currently at. And a lot of people are really concerned about recession and vacation because they go, oh my gosh, recession, that's when people aren't going to vacation anymore. And data and statistics actually tell us that that's not accurate. What actually happens is that people still vacation, but instead of big trips to either overseas or to places like Disney World, big attraction places, they wind up going locally. Well, for us, Corpus Christi is the first beach you hit on your way south from Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. So we have massive amounts of people, major metroplexes within 2.5 to 5. Well, I guess Dallas is more like 6.5 hours, so they're a little bit further. You got Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. They're within a 3.5 hour range, and a lot of people during recession decide to do that instead. They go local, which is great for us because we don't get hit badly by a deep recession like some places where, like, maybe if your Airbnb was Disneyland, you might have a really difficult time if times get tough and people can't pay for the Disney prices anymore. So those are some interesting things to think about. It might be better to do it somewhere else. And there's a lot of AirDNA is an incredible spot to start looking at different properties and different cities as a whole to see what different cities do. Awning.com is another really good website that I actually just discovered. It's very much like a Zillow or a Redfin, where it teaches you, it looks at different properties, but instead it looks at it as if you're an investor. So instead of just giving you like what the estimated down payment is, it'll actually give you what the estimated long-term rental would be, cash flow wise, and valuation ratios and everything, and cash on cash return. And then you can click a button to short term, and then boom, it'll give you all the data for short term and what it'll cash flow and cap gains and all that kind of stuff, which is a way that you judge commercial real estate purchases.
What's it called?
Awning, AWNING, awning.com. AirDNA is just for short-term rentals. And so short-term rentals as a whole, in case you don't know, is anything under 30 days or under 29 days, depending on what city you're in or what state you're in. But that encompasses, so Airbnb is just a platform for people to find short-term rentals. A lot of people say, oh, do you Airbnb? And that's really, they should ask, do you short-term rental? So we use the Airbnb platform. We also use the VRBO platform. We also use the booking.com platform. And now we have direct booking platform and are about to open a Google vacations platform as well, which is new and popular and starting to pick up speed. So those are, short-term rental is the all-encompassing. Airbnb is just the popular term that a lot of people think about, but it's simply a platform for people to go on. So there's a lot of different things to think about. I mean, obviously, you're also, a lot of people got into Airbnb, and so the realm got really saturated. And so if you don't have a nice looking one, you're probably hurting right now. So you want to make sure that it's nice and attractive and that it's clean. Reviews are king on Airbnb, and they really go towards lean heavily on favoring the guests instead of the hosts, which is kind of tough. And so, you know, you can have you get super host status if you can keep a 4.9 average rating on all of your properties. So if you get enough bad ratings, then you lose your little super host badge, and then your booking rates go down, and then you start losing money. So it's really advantageous to make sure that you keep a good ranking and reviews. Also, that helps you want first page. You want to be on the first page. If you have to scroll 10 pages down, like if you do a search for yourself, your Airbnb, you're okay, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom home in Corpus Christi, and I want these features. And it takes you're scrolling through 10 pages before you find your property. That's not good. You need to get your property up to the first or second page, because if it's 10 pages down, you're not going to get booked till last minute. And at last minute, you're dropping your rates, and then you're losing lots of money. So it's advantageous, and you want to get as high in the ratings as possible. Just like having a business on the front page of Google. I mean, who scrolls through, like, who clicks next 5 times on Google? If you're there, you're not getting seen. You know, you need to be you need to get good SEO, search engine optimization going on for your website, and you need the same thing for Airbnb. The problem is that their algorithm is always changing. And so you've got to keep up to date with what they want you to post on there. So sometimes they want you changing photos, so you switch your photos. Sometimes they don't like specific titles. They used to really like blue photos because it meant water, and they thought that was popular. Now they've gone away from that, and that's not a thing anymore. So every single update totally disrupts everyone and what they've built, and you almost have to reinvent or rethink through how your property has done. Good high quality photos are essential, always horizontal, never vertical. They actually put you further down in the rankings if you have vertical photos on your page, because it doesn't work well with their platform. And so they don't want that. So they discourage it from being that way, because it doesn't look good, because then they have to crop out space, and that's not how they like it. So you have to do, as much as some of us are Instagram trained on vertical photos, it's for real estate, it's a no. You got to do, or especially for short term, you have to do horizontal photos if you want to be relevant. So our current statistics, we are estimating a profit of $60,000 this year, and that is pre-tax profit. So that means after we paid our cleaners, after I've paid the hundreds of dollars and all the software that we use, after we've done lawn maintenance, everything. We're looking at our revenue is probably around 120 to 130,000 dollars a year, and our profit is around $60,000 a year. So the rest of that goes to mortgages, goes to utility fees, goes to cleaning fees, which cleaning is a huge cost, but our guests pay for it. And so we don't have to. So anyway, there's a lot involved with that. But once we got to, if you don't have a job, I've heard of people that can manage 7 to 8 properties before they have to automize. If you already have a full-time job, I don't believe you can get past 3 unless you are just a titan of organization. Then you might be able to get to 4 or 5. But for us, it was 3. So when we opened up the 4th one, we said we're using the profit from the 4th one and we're paying for software to optimize all of our systems. And so that's what we did. So I spent almost a solid month just onboarding with different companies and programs to where we've got, I need to count it for sure, but it's 10 or 11 different software pieces that help us automate all of our processes. That, again, I'll talk about that in a second one because I want to do an in-depth with our entire system and program so that someone else could take it and go decently far with it. So finding good cleaners is obviously an important thing. You can train your own, which from what I hear, once you get to 4 or 5 is a good time to start training your own once you have that many properties. Because you can pay them $15 an hour, which is still a decent rate. And if you train them yourselves, then you're golden. But if you try to hire out, it's closer to $25 an hour. And so you can actually make quite a bit more money if you hire and train your own at a sale. Still, I feel like a fair rate of $15 an hour, depending on what city you're living in. So cleaners are really important, and finding a good handyman too that can, or really a couple of handyman, because if one's busy and like, let's say that we've had the water heater was broken in San Antonio. And so we have guests complaining about cold water. And if I can't get someone out there to fix it quick enough, I've got people dealing with cold water that are then going to leave me a low review because they had to deal with cold water the whole time. And that actually happened. And so we had a guy go out probably 3 or 4 times and he couldn't figure out what the problem was. And finally it was the valve had like auto closed and we had someone else go out who could actually weld it. But we had to give that guy a refund. And we decided to do that. So we gave him $50 back and said, oh, we're so sorry that you had cold showers. But he gave us a 5-star review. So that $50 was worth the price of not having, we've never had a 3-star review. We've had probably 20 to 25 4-star reviews throughout our properties, sometimes for legitimate things, sometimes for people not understanding what a 4-star review does to your property. But now we have messaging that helps a lot we've gotten better reviews since we did messaging. So we like check on people the next morning, go, hey, I hope you slept well. If there's anything you need or there's any problems, please let us know. We'll get more into that in the next one, but that's an important aspect of it. So it's not easy. It's a lot of upfront work, and it's especially not easy until you get automated. So I'd say the first 3 are probably going to be harder for us than 4 through 8 will be. So most properties in 2020, end of 2023 here in Corpus Christi, you cannot purchase and cash flow a property under traditional conventional loans like you used to be able to for a long-term rental. You used to be able to go buy a house and you could rent it out to somebody and you cover all your expenses and fees and still make $200 to $500 a month on top of it. You can't do that anymore. Now it's more like you're losing $500 to $700 a month because the rates have changed so much, because its houses are so much more expensive. So right now, the only way to really get into a rental game is by doing Airbnb. But I don't think that's a good idea, because what if for some reason your property gets kicked off of Airbnb and VRBO is not very popular? What are you going to do? You need to have a backup plan. And so you need to have a property. In my mind, if you're going to purchase a property, it's got to be something that you can at least do long-term on and still be okay. Because if short-term rental doesn't work out, you've got to fall back on either midterm or on long-term in order to make that happen. So midterm is anything over a month, but under a year, and it's usually furnished. So a lot of times you go into Furnish Finder for that, you're using nurses. There's also this insurance gig you can get on if you have enough properties. You can get in with the insurance teams, and when someone gets displaced, like let's say someone's house burns down, where do they live? They've got to live somewhere. And so you can actually offer your house up for them to live, and the insurance money pays for them to live in your house while theirs is either being rebuilt or they're being relocated or whatever has to wind up happening. So that's a really lucrative gig to get into. We have not gone down that route yet. What I'm doing right now is I'm tracking how low which property is during this low season. And then next year, I'm going to evaluate that and see if it's worth it for us to try and do Furnish Finders, excuse me, and get some 1 or 2 month midterm rentals going that can make us more money than really low and more sporadic short-term rentals. So for instance, right now, December is not too bad for us, but our properties are very cheap right now. It's a very good time to come and stay at one of our properties. Summertime, our rates are a minimum of double what they are right now. And it's more booked out. So, you know, it's a lot more difficult to stay during the summertime. People book out more in advance. And the type of property you have, it really changes too. So if you're a couple or a single, you tend to plan your vacations within 1 to 2 weeks. So we get a lot of bookings on our studios. The mother-in-law suite at the other house is 700 square feet, and our guest house that's 600 square feet that can sleep 4, but the extra 2 are a couch with either it's either a fold down couch or it's a pull out couch. So we're really looking at, normally we're looking at 2 people because there's not separate bedrooms for it either. So it's usually 2 people that stay. And so for those types of people are usually booking a week to 2 weeks in advance on average. If you look at our 3 and 4 bedroom property, those are traditionally either 1 to 2 families, and they book months in advance. So if you look at those bookings, they're way further out than our studio ones are. So that's another decision you have to make. Do you want to get a house that is a 3 or 4 bedroom or a 1 or 2 bedroom? And some of that can depend on what type of place you're at and even what area of the city you're in. So a downtown environment, what do you think downtown's going to get? More business people that are on work trips for a week or 5 days, or families that really want a vacation downtown?
Work people.
Work people. So it'd probably be better to have a studio downtown, because the people that are going to be attracted to that type of area match the profile of the property that you have. Okay. Or let's say you're close to a hospital, you want a studio or a 1 or a 2 bedroom because you're going to get traveling nurses that are coming in that are singles or have a small family. All right. Then if you're at the beach, you're really looking for more family vacation spots. So you want a 3 or a 4 bedroom in one of those situations. So the type of property even depends on where you're at, if you can pick. So if you're, you know, these are things that looking back, we might have gone, okay, we'd rather be over here for this type. We're just throwing darts at dartboard and seeing what sticks with Airbnb. And we're doing fine. But moving forward, we're going to plan strategically and differently now that we know what we know. So those are things to think about depending on what city you're in, what parts of the city you're in. And it can be really advantageous. You need a permit per the city, and you really want a city that has already set up laws for Airbnb, because if you don't, they most likely will in the near future. And if they're laws that are strict, then you might not be able to Airbnb on your property anymore because of the laws that they implement. So here in Corpus, there's a density limitation. So you can only have, I believe it's 15% Airbnbs on a given street. So if you're on the wrong street, you cannot do an Airbnb. The other thing is that, like for instance, this property, that rule does not take place on this property because we occupy a part of it. So let's say it was way over 50, let's say it's, you know, it is at 15%, and we were opening this one up, it would be fine because we actually live on this property. But again, you can only do that for one property because you can't live in 2 different properties at the same time. So for that's something to think about as well. The different cities that you're looking in, you need to know what the laws are ahead of time before you just go, oh, I can Airbnb here because it's got such a great rate. Maybe it's got a really great rate because there's no Airbnbs there because it's so strict, where there's very few because they only allow one on a street or something like that. And then you go purchase a property and you're in trouble because now you can't do anything with it. So, I think that's the gist of the business as a whole. And, yeah, so any questions or any, yeah, questions?
I got a question.
Yeah,
One of the advantages that you have is that you have skills to build or fix and repair.
yes.
So I feel like you saved a lot of money. How would that affect somebody who doesn't? Like, would it be enough of a, what's it called, a factor for you to consider maybe not, do an Airbnb because you would have to spend on repairs and stuff like that.
Right, so, it's a factor to consider, but it's not a deal breaker. So one of my friends up in San Antonio, his name is Andrew, and he's he's an accountant type guy. He's not a civil engineer workshop like I am. And so we get to save more money by doing that stuff. We also are starting off with a different income level than he is. So I have done all this stuff over the years because I can't afford to go have someone fix my car for me, or I can't afford to go fix, the roof or whatever it is. So I've got to figure that out on my own. So a lot of those skills that I have are because I didn't have the income. So if you have a higher starting income or you've got more capital, then you can hire somebody to do the same things that we did, or you just start with a different type of house that doesn't need as much work. But again, then your investment level is higher. And so that is a part of the calculation. It's not a deal breaker, but you do need to calculate that as you're going into it and going, okay, I've got $20,000 of construction costs where Nate had $7,000 of construction costs because Nate did all the work himself, or 90% of the work himself, or whatever. And Waldina's pretty handy too. So those, yes, it is a consideration. It's not a deal breaker. The other thing to consider is something called arbitrage. Arbitrage is where you go in and let's say that Braylon owns a property and he's been doing long-term rentals for the last couple of years. And I come in, I go, Braylon, or maybe Maria's working for me and Maria calls Braylon and Maria goes, hey, Braylon, what if I told you that you would never have to evict a person again and that your place would be cleaned multiple times a week on average, and that you would have a consistent rent that you don't have to worry about, and then anything that breaks in the property, except for major things like AC or water heater going out, someone else, your tenant, would pay for? How does that sound? And you've just been through you had to evict somebody recently, and you're tired of rent being late, and people have been breaking stuff in your house, and you're sick and tired of having to send handyman over to repair it. And you go, Nate, that sounds, or Maria, that sounds way too good to be true. How do I sign up? And so Maria goes, listen, well, it's arbitrage. We will rent your property from you. We'll do all the things you said. You just got to let us do short-term rental on your property. And so then you go, Braylon says, yeah, that sounds great, Maria. I'd love to. Maria goes, okay, well, let me connect you with my Airbnb or short-term manager or renter, and we'll get you set up. Maria comes and goes, Nate, I found this guy, Braylon, and he's totally down to do arbitrage. And I go, thanks. As soon as we sign the contract with Braylon, I'll pay you $1,000. So you become a middleman for calling and finding people for me to arbitrage because I don't have the time to do that. Meanwhile, you're making $500 to $1,000 every time you find someone who agrees to the deal and it gets a contract signed. For me, this is advantageous because I don't have to purchase a property. All I have to do is furnish it. So I just cut my costs down to a third of what they would have been.
He doesn't
So
own the property.
no, he owns it and he's been renting it out to people. He's a landlord, but he's tired of renting to the types of people that he's been renting to. or he doesn't like some aspect of it, and we're providing a service to him that's much more advantageous. His property is going to be in, he doesn't have to repaint and refix all the holes in his walls every year that his tenants move out and he finds new tenants. He doesn't have to go through the annoying and very difficult process of evicting somebody when they won't leave the property. He doesn't have to worry about vacancies when he can't find somebody for 2 months. Like we're presenting this awesome case that he no longer has to deal with. And if those have been pain points for him, then he's going, this sounds way too good to be true. What's the catch? The catch is you got to let us do short-term rental on it. And some people have stigmas against it and go, oh, no way, I'm out. Sorry. And some people go, okay, yeah, if you can promise me all that and we sign it in contract, how long is the contract for? We go, okay, well, we'll do a 2-year contract and then we'll reevaluate after that point in time. And you go, sound good. So we sign a contract, Maria gets $1,000 and I am paying $7,000 to $13,000 for the furnishing of it that I get to keep. So that's not just wasted. I'm not going to give you my furniture, but we are going to furnish the place, make it look good. We'll see if you let us paint a wall or two to make it match the decor that we're going after. And maybe we'll even build you a deck or put something like that in the back, depending on how your backyard already looks. And so we make this deal and I'm in for $7,000. He's still getting cash flow on his property and doesn't have to worry about all these pain points that he used to. His rent is on time every single month, if not early. And so he's doing great. We're making $900 to $1,100 every month on this property, and we only had to pay $7,000. So we just got cash flow even within 7 months. As opposed to if we had to purchase a property and put it down another $30,000, it'd take us that much longer. It'd take us 3 years plus to start breaking even, making a profit. So the only downside to that is that you're not building equity in a house. So you lose that benefit, but you gain the benefit of of scaling. So let's say it's more realistically $10,000 with, let's say it was, I could roughly get about 4 times as many properties. I could either have one property that I own, or I could have 4 properties that are actually already paid for the same price, but already also paid off within the first 4 months of owning them. And now I'm making $4,000 a month, or I've got one property that I'm making $1,000 a month on and building equity in it. So as long as you see why arbitrage can be so advantageous and why it's such an easy thing to scale, because you get your first one, you get all your money back in the first 7 months, or let's say 10 months. Okay, so 10 months later, you've got your money back. You go do another one, but the first one is also still making money. So now in another 10 months, you buy 2 more, or in 5 months, you buy another one. So now you've got 3. And then after that, it just continues to scale exponentially until you have 15 properties and are making $150,000 a year, or 20, or you have 20 properties and you have someone else manage your properties and you sit back and serve God more in whatever way. So there's all these, not sit back and drink lemonade all day, but serve God. And so it's a way to scale that's a little less traditional. And then the other one, the step further from that is, hey, you already run Airbnb and you're tired of managing it, and I'm really good at managing Airbnbs and have a lot of automations. So let me manage your Airbnbs for you. I need a 20 to 30% cut because it's that much work. And so that person's going, and it's lucrative enough for me. I'd rather take the hit financially and not have to worry about this stuff anymore. I'm tired of dealing with it. And so you go, I'll deal with it. And you put all of your automations in place. You have stipulations of, I need my locks systems and I need my thermostat systems, and we'll trade those out for you for free or not for free. You come to terms with them and you go about it that way. And then you're able to set that up with them. And so you can make a 20 to 30% cut, which if, let's say they're averaging $20,000 to $30,000 on a property, that's a fairly decent take. And again, you're looking at around $1,000 a month for nothing, no initial Now, that's harder to find because there's less people that do an Airbnb, and a lot of people that are doing Airbnb either already have management or are fine managing. So that's a tougher person to find than arbitrage is, where you're taking over someone's long-term rental. But it's also virtually free, and you have there's no risk. The worst risk is you get fired. You have no money in the game, which is awesome. The first one, you have a 2-year contract, so you got to pay the rent for at least 2 years. The first one, where you own your own properties, you have to pay a mortgage every month, or you default on your loan, or have to switch to something else. So the risk also decreases. So there's varying degrees and levels of both risk, cash flow, and equity that you can build. The nice thing about a house is you can write off the taxes on it, and so that becomes nice when it comes to tax season and how much you have to pay the government. Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, that's some,
Oh, I have
that one,
one.
that's good.
You can go.
Okay. If you're not necessarily sure that you want to do Airbnb or like this, but you also haven't purchased your first home, would it still be a good move? Would it still be good to move into your first home with an Airbnb business mentality? Like to consider maybe getting a home, but also thinking of like, since it sounds like, it's a profitable business and it could help in the future, do you think it would still be a good idea to look into your home, considering would this be also be a good place to Airbnb and maybe starting out like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, James Skinner is actually doing this right now. So he purchased his first property. He converted his garage, and he lives in the converted garage and rents out the bedrooms to other people, and pays for his mortgage and lives there for free. So he doesn't have a mortgage, but he's got a house that's building equity. Now, I don't think he's cash flowing, but now what he's looking at is building a little casita on the back of that property and then turning that into an Airbnb that cash flows around $500 plus a month. So then he's increasing the equity on his property, and he's going to get $500 cash flow a month, roughly, if everything works out right, for adding that. So for us,
What's equity again?
equity is how much of your house you actually own. So
Okay.
if you put a 20% down payment, then right off the bat, you have 20% equity in the house if you could sell the house for the same price you bought it for.
Okay.
And assuming no realtor fees and some other things that aren't true. But so the longer you live in the house, the more you pay into the principal. So you're paying your loan off. Every part of the principal that you pay down, you now own that much more in the house. So over years, eventually, over the course of 30 years, if you have a 30-year loan, you've paid off the entirety of your property, and now you have 100% equity in the house, and you actually own it outright. That's equity. So that's a benefit, because if you think about it this way, a house is going to appreciate every single year, and it usually beats out the oh my gosh,
Interest.
no,
Inflation.
inflation, thank you. It usually beats out the inflation. So your property is gaining more value every year than the inflation is. So that's a benefit. On top of it, if you're renting it to someone else, they're paying off your mortgage. You're not paying it off, they are. And then on top of that, if you can cash flow, then you're also making money every month on top of the mortgage that you pay. So there's 3, and then you can also have tax benefits because of it as well and pay less in taxes. So there's 4 ways. And then if your area is appreciating at a high value, or you're adding equity, it's called sweat equity. It's where you do things to your house to make it more valuable. And that's another way that your house can make money. So there's a lot of different ways that you can, that's why owning a house is such a lot of times an advantageous thing to do. Now, I talked to a disciple recently who bought at the wrong time and banks started closing. And that was a really bad time for him. He lost all of his properties. Now, laws have gone into place to where those types of loans can't be taken out anymore, but we may, who knows what we're in for in the future as well. So it's not a like guarantee 100% no failure rate. No, it can fail. It can happen. And you do have to be careful, but it can be really, advantageous and lucrative at the same time. So I would like, for us, we exclusively were looking for houses that had a guest house. Mainly because we couldn't afford anything in the realm of what we would normally live in, because prices had just gotten so high and our salary did not increase with the prices of the city we were in at the times. So Corpus was a much more expensive place than San Antonio was, and our pay did not increase as we moved here to match the increased value of the city. So we went from like this 3,300 square foot house that we could totally afford to, there's no way we can afford, a 2,000 square foot house hardly here in Corpus. So we had to, we were like, okay, if we want to live in something that was similar size where we can host people and with our 2 kids and still have an office and all this stuff, we've got to find a place that's got a guest house. And so we were only looking for spots that had them. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Let's see which one's more important.
Why don't you
It's like
pick?
it's like you're reading one of those, like they're sending in questions through the text, like, oh, let's see what we got here.
Pick your 2 favorite, because we need to move on.
I can ask you what she's thinking.
Okay,
So imagine you were in my.
but then she's gonna listen and can't think.
Oh, great. I was gonna ask, what if you were in my position, right? I'm working, I'm making some money,
Mhm.
and I'm looking for opportunity to get a property, and then see what I can make out of it.
Mhm.
How would you advise me?
Most always, the advice that's given for people that are in your shoes that are single are do what James is doing. And it's called house hacking. It's where you live in a house and you also rent out a portion of it to other people. And that's how you live mortgage free, or you make some money, and depending on how you work it out, or you find a place like us that had a guest house and then you live with a couple of brothers in it at the same time. And so you got someone in the guest house that's making money, and then you're, maybe it's, so your rent is then split 3 ways. And so I would definitely try to, you're also going to get a way better interest rate. So you're going to be able to get a lower interest rate and a much lower down payment. You can get a 3 or 3.5% down payment, where the best you're going to do is 20% if it's an investment house. So that's way more money, right? I mean, that's 6 times as much money if the property that you're purchasing you're not going to live in, versus they'll cut what you have to down pay by a 1/6 if you're going to live in it.
Is it something that you state in the agreement when you purchase the house that you're not going to be living there
Yes, and it's called mortgage fraud if you don't live in it.
until you pay off everything?
No, just for normally a mortgage company will say for the first 6 months. So one strategy is move every 6 months.
Okay.
And there's no problem with that, or a year, depending on where you're at. A year is safer, but so you can move every 6 months.
And in that case, can I still be in the garage like that brother is doing?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
That's a good deal.
I mean, you have to renovate it. There's quite a few places in Corpus.
It's a man cave.
It's a bigger bedroom than you probably have already. So.
Okay.
I have another one after she's done.
Okay.
We have 10 more minutes.
I highlighted 4 different things. One of them is, they're not full sentences, maxing out your monthly profit. So how do you scale? So if you max out this of like your monthly profit of like what you're gonna make a month, then like, and you're working on only having 4 properties, do you want to have more properties, like to be financially free? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely, we've got these properties. I mean, to some degree maxed out. I mean, we could add hot tubs, we could add a lot of different amenities, but most of those amenities that would add value are more expensive than it would be to have another property. And it would be more advantageous to have another property in a lot of them. Now, right now, it's an interesting time, so it might actually be better to not. But I don't think that adding a hot tub where we're at to our places, especially with the amount of maintenance that it costs, or adding a pickleball court, we don't have land for that, but most of the amenities, like we've thought about getting paddle boards and kayaks for the properties. So spending something like $400 to $500 or maybe $600 per property and adding kayaks as options to highlight different amenities for people to get our properties selected earlier on, so we don't have to drop the rates as much and we get better booking rates. So
And how are you, what's your, okay, this goes to my next question. What's your vision for your Airbnb business to be financially free?
ours personally.
Yeah.
Next, we're gonna do, since we got highlighted as the top 3 finalists for best Airbnb businesses in Corpus Christi, we are going to try and capitalize on that and start managing others instead of purchasing homes, because homes are so expensive right now.
Managing other people's properties?
Other people's short-term rentals. So going, hey, are you tired of doing your short-term rental? No,
Oh,
not renting out someone's property from them, but taking someone's Airbnb they already are running and managing it for them. So the
What
third
would the
option,
cut look like?
20 to 30%,
What would you have to do?
manage it.
Like with
So
marketing or like,
no, we're using our cleaners, we're using our
Okay.
handyman. It's like a full-on property for us, but we don't have to furnish it. They're already using their furnishing. I might go in and retake pictures. I might go, hey, can we change a couple of these pieces of furniture out, or change a photo, or can I paint a wall or something like that to make it a little more high end depending on the property.
yeah,
But other than that, we're managing the whole thing, but we're getting about the same amount as we would arbitraging
mhm,
for no money in.
yeah, okay, cool. And then another one of my questions is like, you mentioned with connecting with like insurance companies.
That's something we haven't done yet, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's for midterm rentals.
yeah, I think that's a good idea. So I stayed in a hotel for 7 or 8 months.
Mhm.
And the price that the insurance companies paid, it is, they could use people for Airbnb, but how do you market yourself to insurance companies?
You have to have enough, I believe it's 4 to 5 properties before most insurance brokerages will even talk to you. And then you have to go, hey, here's what we have and here's what we do. The other thing that makes it more difficult is that normally they go, the fire happened, we need someone for 6 months tomorrow. I don't ever have 6 months of free bookings in front of me. Like the way that our properties work is I'm booked out or have sporadic bookings for the next 2 months.
Mhm.
So that's something that is kind of more of a midterm type, or you have to plan for and hope that someone needs a property in the wintertime when your bookings are low. And so you block off your property ahead of time for 2 months to short-term rentals. So no one can rent your place short-term. And you're going, I'm hoping that I can get traveling nurses in for midterm or insurance company stuff coming in. So you'd have to block off for that, because you cannot, if you have more than if you have 1% cancellations on Airbnb's platform, they start dinging you. And it's bad. So canceling on guests is a very bad thing. We've never done it. We've kicked guests out for reasons after we contact Airbnb, but canceling on a guest ahead of time for no reason is like a big, you get dinged pretty heavily. And if you do it more than 1% within a given year, you lose your superhost status. So even doing that once a year. So you can, once there's a booking there, don't cancel it. It's locked in place unless there's some major massive reason. So that's the insurance thing. Anything else? We got 5 minutes left.
I got one, but I mean, for the sake of time, you could call it, and I'll just ask you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna ask, how much would I need to get this started?
It depends on what route you go, either nothing, $10,000, or if you're moving into a place, it really depends on the condition of the house and how much your down payment is. But to furnish a couple of bedrooms or to furnish a guest house, like you could do a guest house like that for $5,000 if it was already looking decent as far as like the countertops are nice and the bathroom's already nice and you're just sprucing it up and adding furniture. Then you could even maybe, if you were really smart about it, get away for $3,000 to $4,000 for a place like that. But we had to redo the kitchen. There was like a half kitchen in there. It was ugly. So we put new cabinets in and I put shelving in and we made the bathroom look nice and put a new vanity in and a bunch of stuff like that. So
Sign me up for nothing.
Yeah, for nothing.
start calling. That's that method.
Good.
Well, and that you wouldn't be able to do because you have zero experience. So no one's gonna go, oh yeah, sounds good. Go ahead and manage my what type of experience do you have? None.
Like, huh?
We're able to leverage that
Experience?
because we just got best Airbnb or top 3 Airbnbs in Corpus.
Nice, okay.
So that is helpful. What are your credentials? Well, here we go. And here's our over the last year and a half, here's our average star rating on Airbnb. And here's our average income that we're grabbing. Like we've got I haven't checked recently, but last year in 2022, we had the #1 and the #2. Both of our studios were the highest grossing studios in Corpus Christi proper. So not only did we do a really good job, we also made a lot of money on it. We weren't just giving away super cheap Airbnbs.
Nice.
I mean, we had a booking for $300 a night for this place over the summertime. So in 2 nights we made $600. Where right now we make $75 a night on it. So that's a massive difference.
Yeah.
Final questions?
Yes.
We'll get you after.
2 minutes.
Okay. All right. Briefly, I'm gonna end the stream recording here.